Again, my name is Martin Victor. I am a native speaker from the US. I live in India, and I've been teaching both IELTS and TOEFL for over 8 years. I have a lot of experience with IELTS, writing tests for IELTS, as well as teaching IELTS as well. Same thing for TOEFL. And I also teach spoken English as well, forgive me. Let's get started. First of all, I'm going to give you an overview of IELTS speaking, the structure of it, what to expect, some common mistakes and things like that. And then we'll go more into the cue card. So let's get started. Okay, so now the speaking section, the speaking is the same for academic and general IELTS. This means that whether you're taking academic or general IELTS, you're going to have the same test. There's absolutely no difference between the two. Now, the session is an interview between you and the examiner. You meet face-to-face in a room, and the examiner asks you questions, and you answer them to the best of your ability. The session will be recorded, and this is good because you get to ask questions at the end of the session. So, and this is important so you can get feedback of how you sound, how your answers are, and this is important, especially if you don't think you did that well. Now, the total time is 11 to 15 minutes, and it's held on a different day than the other modules. So when you do reading, listening, and writing, that's on one day, and on another day, the speaking portion of the test is scheduled. Okay, sorry for the interruptions. Okay, now let's talk about the structure itself of IELTS speaking. We have basically 4 parts. Even one of them is, the last one, as you can see, is discussion. Now, the first part is an informal interview. This is where you start off with 4 questions. That's to introduce and get the and to break the ice. So you're asked what your name is. They check your identification, and then they ask where you live. That portion is not scored. So, but the next set of questions are. So this is what is known as general questions. General questions are basically simple questions that can be answered very simply and short, and you get 6 to 7. Usually the topics for the general questions are about you. They'll start off asking you about your home or your studies or your work, and then move off to other subjects as well. This lasts about 4 to 5 minutes. And then part 2 is the cue card. This is the long talk. This is where you have to talk for an extended period of time. And this lasts somewhere between 2 to 3 minutes, I'm sorry. 2.5 to 3 minutes. You'll get 1 minute to prepare, and then you'll have to speak up to 2 minutes. Then part 3 are follow-up questions. Follow-up questions will be a series of questions, 6 to 7, that are, the topic is based on the cue card. So they'll be related to the cue card, but they'll be more of an abstract nature. And so you'll have about 3 minutes for this section. And then afterwards, you have a chance to discuss your answers with the examiner. And I really recommend that you do, because you're probably going to have some doubts and you want them cleared. So that's the time to ask. And this is when you can review the recording. So the examiner will play back certain answers for you to kind of give you an idea of where you may have done poorly or where you may have done really well as well. So, all right, now let's move on. Now, for speaking, there are some common mistakes that people make, and I think you should be aware of those so you don't make them. First of all, responding to a question with silence. Yeah, this occurs when you're asked a question and you don't say anything, like what I just did then. You respond in silence. Usually this occurs when you have no idea what the question is. You're not sure of what the question, you don't understand, or you're not sure of what words to use. Now, use some type of phrase to get you started, such as, well, I think that's an important point. Or if you don't know, you can say something like, I'm not sure about the topic, but I'll give it a try. And then do your best. The next problem is speaking in a flat or monotone voice. Now, if you notice how I'm speaking, I don't sound like a robot like I'm doing now. You want to have some type of emotion in your voice. This is natural speaking. And so the scorers are going to look at how natural your speech is. And so when you talk in a flat monotone voice, you won't sound natural. Another thing is you don't want to speak too fast, because when you speak too fast, it's going to be hard for the listener to keep up with you. It's also going to be hard for you to keep up with your thinking as well. Another thing is that it's going to affect your pronunciation. Also, you don't want to speak too slow, because if you speak too slow, then you might put the scorer to sleep. Actually, no, you're not going to do that. But again, both speaking too fast and speaking too slow are not natural. You need to find a good pace that's neither too fast nor too slow. Also, speaking too loud. Speaking too loud, it's basically considered rude. And then speaking too soft, where you're kind of whispering like this. I'm sure you probably didn't hear me, but speaking too soft like that can affect your pronunciation. The person in the scorer may not be able to hear the full pronunciation of a word. So try to find a good level of volume for your voice. Also, speaking in your native language. This occurs a lot. Sometimes I get students who slip into their native language and they may throw in a word or two. You should not speak in your native language. Now, it's okay to use a term, say like you're talking about clothing. So here in Punjab, India, for instance, if I'm talking about women's clothing, specifically, there's a style of dress called a salwar kameez that women traditionally wear. So I'll use that term, but I want to give a brief explanation of it. So I might say women here in Punjab traditionally wear salwar kameezes, which is a long tunic with loose baggy pants. Another thing is you don't want to use slang, and this happens often too. For instance, a student of mine recently used the word scooty because she was referring to her scooter. You don't want, now, I may not know what a scooty is, especially since I'm not from India. I live here, but I may not know all these slang terms here in India. You could get an examiner who's not from your country and knows nothing about your culture. And slang usually reflects culture. And so you want to avoid using slang. So my student, I had to correct her and say scooter. Another common one is two-wheeler. A two-wheeler could be a bicycle or motorcycle or a scooter. So you want to also be specific in your terms. Also, you want to use first person. You want to avoid using first person speech. You don't want to say you when you're describing something or and talking about another person. You don't want to say you, because when you say you, you're referring directly to the examiner. And so you want to keep that in third person. So you want to say he or she or they. Another thing is repeating the question. A lot of students repeat the question, not necessarily word for word, but they use a lot of words for repeating the question. And so what IELTS expects you to do is to paraphrase. So put other words, someone else's words, in this case, the question, into your own words. And then asking to have the question repeated. It's okay to ask maybe once or twice to have the question repeated, but you don't want to repeatedly ask that question. This shows that you have difficulty understanding. Finally, there's common grammar and vocabulary mistakes that are often made. These include using vocabulary in the wrong context, the wrong situation. Also, for grammar, preposition use. I see a lot of incorrect preposition use, such as, my parents are angry on me. That would be incorrect. They would be angry at me. Okay, so let's move on. Now, let's talk about the IELTS Cue Card. Do we have any comments? First of all, let me check. Okay, no comments so far. And so let's move on then to IELTS Cue Card. Now, as I said, the cue card is a long talk about a specific topic. Could be talking about your a person you admire, or an aquatic animal, or a tall building. Those are examples. Topics are usually usually relatable. This means you usually have some experience with the topic, and they're based on your experience. Now, examples here. Describe a tall building in your city that you like or dislike. Talk about a family member whom you admire. Talk about a piece of local news that you have found interesting. Now, one thing to know is that the cue card will also come with 4 questions, and they're basically bullet points, and those are important. So, for instance, describe a skill that you can teach others. What is the skill? How did you acquire it? How did you learn the skill? How would you teach the skill? And how would you teach it? Now, these are very important because they can help you come up with ideas of how to answer the cue card and what to talk about for the cue card. And there's another importance for these, which I'll get to in just a few minutes. Now, the requirements for the cue card, you have 1 minute to prepare. And that 1 minute, you just don't want to sit there and thinking about what you're going to say. You want to take notes. And taking notes enough to just kind of jog your memory. Now, you'll have up to 2 minutes to speak. You don't want to speak you don't want to go over 2 minutes, but your speech should be within 2 minutes, and a good response should be somewhere between 1.5 to 2 minutes only. If you finish within that time frame and everything is good in terms of what you say and how you say, how reasonable and logical it is, how well structured, you will get a good band score. Now, some general tips for the cue card. You want to explain and describe in specific details. Then you want to elaborate and expand on your explanations and descriptions. Again, using details. And then you want to give examples in details as well. So, for example, if the cue card is talking about someone you admire, you can talk about some of the things the person you admire does that makes you admire him or her. For example, I really admire my grandmother. One of the reasons why I admire her is because She worked really hard to become successful in her life. She started off poor, and she took on several jobs to support her two children, my father and my aunt. And then she ultimately became a businesswoman and was very successful. So you want to go into details in your examples and in your explanations and descriptions. And so explaining in detail, that's another good point. When you explain and describe in detail, it allows for better sentence structure and grammar as well. And that's important for IELTS, for the scoring, because they expect you to be able to use a wide range of different sentence structures, from simple to complex. And when you're talking in detail, you're getting those complex sentences in. And then you also want to speak with feeling. So when you speak with feeling, if you're talking about something happy, you want to sound a little bit happy. If you're talking about something challenging, you want to kind of sound a little bit serious. You know, the reason why you want to do this is it offers better intonation. So, and this means better pronunciation, and it's also part of natural speaking. Intonation, we're talking about the rhythm and flow of English. So that's what you want to get. Now, again, you don't want to repeat the question. I've already talked about that. You don't want to have a long introduction. That's important. Sometimes I hear very long introductions, 30 seconds or more. But you don't want to have a long introduction. You only want to keep it to one sentence only. So, for example, let's take the question about the topic of the person you admire the most. You could start off by saying, there's a lot of people that I admire, but the one person I really admire is my grandmother. So you keep it simple like that. Do not have a long introduction. A lot of times the introduction is it's on the same topic, but it's unrelated to the topic. So you want to avoid that. Also, you do not want to summarize at the end of your talk, okay? When you summarize, you end up repeating everything you say, or a lot of what you say. And that's going to affect your score because you want to avoid repetition of ideas. And then finally, you want to close with a single sentence, such as, and that's my favorite park in my area. Or, that's why I really admire my grandmother. Now, let's talk about preparation. I talked about using the bullet points before. And this is where another important aspect of the bullet points, the supplementary questions, come into play. They help you structure your talk. And they're looking at how well your talk is structured. They're looking at the organization of your ideas. And so use them, answer each one in turn. And that will give you a very good structure. And then as you prepare, you want to make notes. And you don't want to write sentences. You just want to write keywords, maybe 1 to 3 words, so that it jogs your memory. So again, don't write long sentences. Don't try to write a script. You won't have time to do that. Just keep it to keywords. Now, this is an example I have on screen to kind of give you an idea of the type of how you want to write the notes. You know, some of the notes are a little bit longer, but they are in keywords. So the topic here is describe an art exhibition you visited. So, when did you see this exhibition? Where was the exhibition held? What was on display? And explain your impression of the exhibit. So now, if you look, I have a number of points that I want to talk about, and they're very specific points too. And that's another thing. Keep your points to specific details. And the rule with being specific is the more specific you are, the more you have to say, and the more a person is going to understand you because you're using very specific details in your talk. So if you look here, Francisco de Goya Capriccio, well, that's the artist. The Capriccio was the style, was what this series of work was called. It was basically black and white drawings, small drawings. It was a field trip for a drawing class. And then it occurred 15 years ago. And then it was there to study the drawings, see how the artist did them, and then to pick three drawings and copy them. It was at the San Jose Museum of Art, and then and the drawings. This next line is a description of the drawings, and then I'm going to pick out one where that's my favorite, and that's going to be my example. So it was a drawing of two women riding a broom. One was an older woman, one was a younger woman. The younger woman was behind the older woman. They were flying through the air like witches, and there was the full moon was in the background along with an owl. So that's going to be my description, and you want to be descriptive in your talk. Now, then I'm going to say I enjoyed it, and I'm going to explain why I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it because I learned a lot. I learned about the artist, that he was the court artist for the Spanish king of the time, and then I'm going to talk about the purpose of the drawings. What I learned about that they were political and social comments of the time, and the technique he used, and then I got a chance to use the same technique, and then I'm going to sum it up by saying it was an overall good experience. So that's the kind of notes you want to take. So now I talk about details here. And one of the problems with students is they don't know how to extend their answers. They don't know how to build on their answers. And this is where adding details is important. So for example, let's say this is a general question. What do you do for work? Don't just say I'm a doctor or I'm a teacher. Say something like I have here on the screen. Or for me, I can say I'm a teacher. I'm not going to just say I'm an IELTS teacher. I'll say I'm an IELTS teacher, and I've been teaching both IELTS and TOEFL for over 8 years, as well as, and let me restart. I'm an IELTS teacher, and I've been teaching both IELTS and TOEFL for over 8 years, and I've taught hundreds of students. And so that's how you want to extend your answers. Build on your ideas, build on them with details. And details, I'm going to tell you this, they give color and depth to your responses. And they make what you say interesting. And interesting responses always score higher. They always score higher. If they're not interesting, if they lack in details, you're going to have a lower score. Well, also with details, you have more things to say as well. So build on your details. Okay. Next thing we want to look at is structuring your response. I think we talked about, yes. Now, sample cue card response. So I'm going to give you two responses here. First is one that doesn't have any details, and then one that's going to be detailed to kind of give you an idea of how we are. Okay, so we're almost Okay, so let me give you the first one. Describe an aquatic animal that I've seen. I've seen many types of aquatic animals. They from fishes and octopus and other things. I've seen these animals because I've gone fishing, I've gone to aquariums and seen them on TV and I and in movies as well. And so the one I want to talk about is this fish I saw, and it looked like a gold bar off in the distance. And it was kind of squarish in shape, um, and as it came near me, I was at the Golden Temple in Amritsar, and I was at the pond that surrounded the Golden Temple. And as it came near me, it started looking around, and it had looked more like a fish. And it was the first time I've ever seen such a fish. And so when I went home, I started trying to research what it was, although I couldn't find anything. But and I really was fascinated by this fish because it looked like gold, and that's the fish. Okay, so that was a really poor response. I just want to give you an example of that. All right, now I'm going to attempt to give a good response. Now, I'm going to do my best. Keep in mind that I have not prepared, but I want to show you try to attempt to show you the difference between the two. So now, I've seen a lot of I've seen a lot of marine life in my day, but the one I want to talk about is the dolphin. The dolphin is a marine animal which is rather large. It's about 12 feet long. It's bluish gray, and it looks like a small whale, except it has a snout. It has a fin on its back, like a shark, and in front of that is the blowhole where it breathes. It also has flukes, which are basically its tail, the fins at its tail, and they're horizontal, unlike a fish, which is vertical, and it uses the flukes to propel itself through the water. I've seen this animal on TV. I remember growing up and watching a television called Flipper. It was centered on a dolphin and a family that had it as a pet. I've also seen these up close and live at an aquarium. I remember when I was a child, my parents took me to an aquarium, and I was able to go to a pool that had a lot of dolphins, and they were swimming around, and I actually reached out and touched one, and I remember it feeling very soft. And then later we went on to the arena and watched the water show, which featured dolphins, and I was really astounded at the acrobatic moves that the dolphins were displaying. They could jump really high. They could carry balls on their nose, and it was really exciting to see them perform. And I really love dolphins because I think they're graceful animals, and they're very beautiful. They're also very intelligent, and they've been known to save human lives. And I think this is really fascinating about them, and that's why I like dolphins. And so I think I could do better had I prepared for that one, but I hope you can see the difference between the two. Now, I think we're almost done. Are there any comments?
No comments at all.
Okay, so no comments. So I want to thank you so much for joining me today. It was a pleasure. We're going to be having live sessions regularly. Please join this channel and follow my IELTS tutor here on YouTube. If you want to know more about this, more about IELTS, more about the services that we offer here at My IELTS Tutor, please click on the link. And again, I want to thank you and thank you for joining me, and I'll see you soon. Goodbye. I'm done. What do I do now?